Hi, in this lesson we get to tap into the power of computing and learn about a Python structure that will make our job significantly easier. If we look back at our last program, it works great. We use an if statement and modulus to easily print out our bag options that work. Only problem is we have to manually keep changing the value of bag count to test each option, which is not much more efficient than just doing it with a calculator. Now we can copy and paste code, but we still need to update the numbers, and we have a lot of repeated code, which is not efficient. Thankfully, Python has a technique that allows us to try many numbers very quickly. Introducing for loops. A for loop is a programming technique that allows us to repeat code a fixed number of times. Let's take a look at an example. Imagine you want to print out happy birthday 100 times for your friend, or your cute little cousin. I could write one print statement with happy birthday, but then would have to copy and paste it 100 times. It's doable, but not terribly fast, and again has a lot of repeated code. For loops allow us to repeat code without having to rewrite it each time. The basic structure looks like this. We tell the program how many times to repeat and which lines of code to repeat. That's it. This makes it a lot easier to write and read, and produces a much shorter program. It also allows us to quickly change the code. Like if we want to say Happy New Year instead of Happy Birthday, we would have had to change it 100 times. Now we only need to change it once. Okay, let's see how we actually write a for loop in Python. Remember, in Python, we use the for loop to repeat code a specific number of times. We read this code like, for I in range count, execute this code. So for our happy birthday example, it would be for I in range 100, print happy birthday. Let's break this down. First, every for loop in Python has these three elements, for, in, and the colon at the end. Next, the range function establishes how many times we want the loop to repeat. By default, it will repeat count times, which can be any whole positive number, like 10, or 10,000. This loop would repeat code 10,000 times. Imagine doing that manually. Or we could use a variable with a value, like candy count, which for the jawbreakers is storing a value of 56. This loop would repeat 56 times. Then we have this I, which is a variable that keeps track of how many times the loop has repeated. By default, I starts at 0 and continues up to count times. So in this example, if count is 5, I will be 0, then 1, 2, 3, and 4. We have 5 loop repeats, but important to know that I will stop after it equals 4. We'll see more of this in our examples. The last is the code you want repeated in the loop. Like the if statement, it's important to have it indented, and we can have any number of lines of code, as we'll see. Okay, so a few important points. For, in, and colon. That's the structure of the for loop. I is an integer variable that keeps track of the repeats. And range count has the loop repeat a total of count times. Now let's step through a couple of examples so we can see what the loop and I variable are actually doing. Let's start with a simple example. We are going to loop 4 times and print the value of I each time we repeat the loop. We have the output console on the far right, and then we'll be keeping track of the I values right next to it. To begin, I starts at the value of 0. It's less than 4, so we enter the loop. The print statement is executed, and 0 is printed to the output console. Now we go back up, and I is increased by 1. It is still less than 4, so we enter the loop and print I again, which now has the value of 1. I again is increased by 1 to the value of 2. It's less than 4, so we enter and print. I is now 3. Still less than 4, so we enter and print. You'll notice that we have executed the print statements 4 times now. At this point, the for loop stops. The loop is done and the program will move on. Again, take note here. The loop repeated 4 times, but the values of I were from 0 to 3. Now let's take a look at our happy birthday example. We want to print it 100 times. We are still going to keep track of I so we can see what is happening. This is identical to the first example, so I'm going to move through this quickly so you can see what is happening. Again, I starts at 0. We print the message, I increases. We print the message, I increases. We print the message, I increases. We print the message, and so forth, all the way until I equals 99. After printing this one more time, we have now printed happy birthday 100 times. At this point, the loop stops, and the program moves forward into any following code. As you can see, the for loop is amazing. It took only 2 lines of code with the for loop to do what would have taken 100 lines of copy and paste. For loops and looping in general is one of the major advantages to computer programming. Let's now see this in action with a live editor.